Everybody? Yeah. All right. Assalamualaikum and very good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Saya dahului dengan Tuan Toisin Gantor, SUB Bahagian Hal Ehwal Sabah dan Sarawak. Nama saya Norrizan Abd Majid daripada Bahagian Hal Ehwal Sabah Sarawak, Jabatan Perdana Menteri. Saya mengucapkan terima kasih kerana saudara-saudari sudi bersama kita dalam webinar pada ini. Hari ini kita bertuah sekali kita dapat berkongsi ilmu dengan yang berbahagia Datin Dr. Faridah Jalil dan amat jauh penceramah kita yang kedua datang down under iaitu yang berusaha Profesor Dr. James Chin. Tuan-tuan dan puan-puan, kita mulakan ceramah ini dengan menjemput Profesor James Chin memulakan ceramah kita pada hari ini yang bertajuk Political Option for MA63 Grievances. Ya. Sedikit mengenai Profesor James. Profesor James merupakan anak kelahiran Kuching, Sarawak, Bumi Kenyalang dan kini berkhidmat sebagai seorang profesor Asian Study, Universiti of Tasmania, Australia. Beliau juga merupakan senior fellow at the Jeffrey Chia Institute on Southeast Asia. Profesor James banyak menghasilkan penulisan mengenai politik, perlembagaan, pembinaan negara bangsa. Ya. Beliau juga banyak menulis artikel-artikel mengenai MA63 yang akan beliau kongsikan bersama kita pada hari ini. Profesor James mendapat pendidikan di University of Sydney, Australia, Master di University of Adelaide and PhD Victoria University of Wellington, New Zealand. Dan kita amat bangga sekali sebagai anak Malaysia, beliau telah dianugerahkan the Sir Desmond Todd Memorial Prize for Best Student, PhD Best Student oleh pihak universiti. Dipersilakan yang berusaha Profesor James. Silakan Prof.
Thank you very much and a very good morning to all of you. I would like to thank PMO Ehwal Sabah and Sarawak Division for inviting me to take part in this seminar series on Sabah and Sarawak MA63. So I'll start off by sharing my screen. Okay, I hope you all can see this. So what I'll do is over the next 35 to 45 minutes, I'll go through with you basically the background of this issue, plus what are the political options available. So I'll start off by talking about the historical context. I'm sure many of you have a very good idea of the historical context, so I'll go through that section very, very quickly. That will be followed by my own thoughts on the political context, plus the political options available to try to resolve the unhappiness in Sabah and Sarawak over the MA63 issue. Then I'll round up my lecture by giving a very, very short summary on where I think things are headed. So in terms of the grievances, like I said, I'll go through this very quickly because many of you have attended all the previous seminars on this issue. So I don't need to go into great details. But basically, if you look at the sort of unhappiness expressed by the people of Sabah and Sarawak, they can be grouped together basically into 5 key areas. The first one is that there's a lot of argument about whether the people of Sabah and Sarawak back in 62, 63 actually gave a real consent to the establishment of the Federation of Malaysia. The second area of contention is, of course, the 20 points and promise of autonomy. The third area where there's a lot of unhappiness is the status of Sabah and Sarawak in the Malaysian Federation. The fourth area is federal intervention in state politics of Sabah and Sarawak. And the fifth area is unhappiness or grievances over the export of Malayan political model to Sabah and Sarawak. So in terms of the consent thing, as I mentioned, there is a lot of unhappiness over whether there was a proper process held to get the wishes of the people of Sabah and Sarawak when it comes to the Federation of Malaysia, the proposal. There is a lot of historical evidences, including paperwork that shows that the entire process was driven by Whitehall and Tunku Abdul Rahman. And during the initial stage, at least the people of Sabah and Sarawak were absolutely not consulted. And the other key evidence that we have is that there was a key meeting held in London between the British PM Macmillan and Tun Abdul Rahman in 1962, where they lay out the time frame for the federation to be established. So in other words, the whole process to create the Federation of Malaysia was not dependent on, for example, the Cobalt Commission or the UN survey. It was all decided in London between Tun Abdul Rahman and Whitehall. We also have to see the formation of the Federation of Malaysia as part of the wider context of the Cold War, the UN push for decolonization, and of course, the British slowly moving to the East of Suez policy. So the argument is very simple. UK wanted to get out of Southeast Asia, so they needed to create a political entity to bring all the territories together. So you remember back in the 50s and 60s, the UK controlled Malaya, Singapore, North Borneo, Brunei, and Sarawak. So if you were sitting in London, obviously during the Cold War era, you're not going to allow all these territories to become independent, basically 5 new countries, right? So it was much easier to bring all of them together into a single country. So that's basically what the British did. They wanted to create a Federation of Malaysia where all these territories will come together as a single new country. The second point of unhappiness is, of course, the 20 points and what the people in Sabah and Sarawak call the blocking promises. So in terms of the key items of the 20 points, the first one is, of course, dealing with religion. Islam's status as a national religion was supposed not applicable to Sabah and Sarawak. But of course, Sabah changed its state constitution to make Sabah the official state religion. Second area is that immigration was to be at the absolute discretion of the state government. The third item is Borneonisation of the civil service. In other words, when the senior British officials left the civil service, they're supposed to be replaced by people from Sabah and Sarawak. The fourth item is no modification of safeguards granted under 20 points, obviously without the agreement of the Sabah and Sarawak state governments. Fifth item, there'll be no right to secede from the Federation. Another item was that the indigenous people of Sabah and Sarawak were to be on par with the Malay community in Malaya. In other words, the special position. And of course, the final thing was that Sabah and Sarawak was to be given a high degree of autonomy. So if you were to ask people in Sabah and Sarawak, have the federal government kept to any of these promises? Most people will say that by and large, they only kept to the promise of immigration. Immigration is still absolute discretion under the state government, but things like modernization, safeguards, all these other things has been modified by the federal government without consulting the Sabah and Sarawak governments. And of course, in terms of the unwritten, broken political promises, you have to remember that back in 62, 63, during the consultation phase, a lot of the leaders, the local, native, and grassroots leaders were actually taken for a tour of Malaya and Singapore. And one of the things that was made very explicit to them was that if they help to form the Federation of Malaysia, then there'll be rapid development of Sabah and Sarawak, and they'll be on par with the economic development found in Singapore and Malaya. The other thing that unhappiness is, of course, the indigenous people were promised that they'll be part of the special position of the Malays in the constitution. But if you speak to some groups among the indigenous people of Sabah and Sarawak, some of them are complaining that they are not on equal. They are sort of regarded as second or third class Putra. And of course, the thing that you read in the newspaper every day is, of course, the unhappiness over the ownership of the oil and gas resources. As you know, Sabah and Sarawak are major oil and gas producing states, and many people in both states are very unhappy that the state received very little money, 5%, and that the bulk of the money is so-called stolen and taken over for the development of Peninsular Malaysia. So people talk about all the major projects that was funded by Petronas. For example, Putrajaya was funded by Petronas, KLCC was funded by Petronas. So all this money, oil and gas money, has been used to build huge projects in Peninsular Malaysia at the expense of infrastructure projects in Sabah and Sarawak. Now, the third item in terms of the status of Sabah and Sarawak in the Malaysian Federation, So every year around this time, around Hari Merdeka on the 31st of August, there's always a question about how people in Malaya calculate the date. So if you Google the word Hari Merdeka 2022, you'll find it all over Google. People put the date 65. When the actual historical fact is that the Federation of Malaysia was formed in 1963, and therefore the correct date is actually 59. So many people in Sabah and Sarawak think that, it's a huge disrespect to the actual date of the formation when Malayan counts the date of independence from 1957. Second thing is, of course, the Constitution Amendment. People are talking about the 1/3 seats, and they talk about autonomy and respect for religious freedom. And of course, they talk about the respect for cultural diversity rather than a Malay-centric approach to culture in Malaysia. The other thing that they talk about when they talk about the status, they talk about whether history is properly taught in Malaysian schools. If you look at history taught in Form 4, Tingkatan 4 or 5, you find that very little is devoted to Sabah and Sarawak. And the problem is that it's also written from a certain angle. So many people in Sabah and Sarawak are worried about whether the real history is taught and whether the real history is taught, especially about the road towards the formation of the Federation. And of course, there are also complaints about whether that Malayans are actually looking down on Sabahans and Sarawakians. So if you speak to Sabahans and Sarawakians living in the Malaya Peninsula, a lot of them say that they've experienced feeling that they are being looked down upon by people from Peninsular Malaysia. So you all heard of the joke where a lot of people think that, in Sabah and Sarawak, there were people in those states living in jungle and living in tree houses, which is absolutely not true. Now, in terms of federal intervention in state politics, I don't have to go through with this. It is quite clear that the federal government has intervened, especially in Sabah, to ensure that the Muslims or the local Malays are getting the power. This includes replacing the chief ministers or the chief ministers that they think is not supportive of this idea, or also the chief ministers who go against the federal government. Now, in terms of Sabah, I think the people of Sabah, in terms of the federal intervention, I think they're especially angry about a thing called Project M, sometimes called Project IC. And this is the program where roughly 1/3 of the Sabah residents born outside Sabah were given Malaysian identity cards and citizenship. So if you look at the statistics, it is quite clear that from 1970 to 2010, Sabah's population increased in a very abnormal way by 390%. It is not possible that this is the natural growth. So in other words, what happened was that a great number of Muslims were imported into Sabah from Mindanao, especially Mindanao, Indonesia. And what happened was that they permanently altered the local politics in Sabah. So you can see in 1976, the native community in Sabah had a majority in the Dewan Undangan Negeri. They had 22 seats. But by 2006, it was a Muslim majority state. You had 36 Muslim seats. And the Kebangsaan Dusun ended up with only 18 seats. There's a mistake in the slides. Huh? So what happened in Sabah was that now that it's a Sabah is a Muslim majority state. The only outcome for any elections in Sabah since the late 1980s and 1990s is that the non-Muslim Bumiputra in Sabah can never recapture power. So the only outcome for any elections in Sabah is either you get an all-Muslim government or Muslim plus government. Finally, the unhappiness stems from the export of the Malayan political model to Sabah and Sarawak. As you know, the classic Malayan political model is based on race and religion. But these two items is not as sharp as in Malaya when you apply to Sabah and Sarawak. For the simple reason that both states are very multiracial, there's lots of diversity, and there's no single ethnic group that dominates the political process like you do on the peninsula. But yet there has been a great push by the Malay establishment in the peninsula to export this model to Sabah and Sarawak. In terms of the diversity, one of the things, the reason why there's a strong backlash over this model is, of course, that if you go to Sabah and Sarawak, you'll find that many of the people there are actually from mixed families. In Sabah, they actually have a special category, for example, called the Sino-Kadazan, is actually an official category. And of course, in Sarawak, there are many communities where there are Muslims and non-Muslims within the same family. Perfect example of that is the Melanau community, where half of the community are Muslims and the other half are Christians and other religious beliefs. So that's the reason why issues like Allah, which is very, very controversial in Peninsular Malaysia, is really not an issue in Sabah and Sarawak. So for example, in Sabah, you got the Sabah Chief Minister attending Christian parties, Christmas party, where Christian songs are sung, and this is widely regarded as a non-issue. The other thing, of course, is that when it comes to this political model based on race and religion, there's an overemphasis on political Islam. And this leads to the non-Muslim movement such as the IBANs in Sarawak and the KDM in Sabah, who feels that they're being marginalized because they are not Muslims. So let me quickly move to another section of my talk, which is the political context, before I talk about the political options available. So in terms of the political context of MA63, although the issue of MA63 has always been there, it has sort of become a key political issue after 2008. So the reasons why it became a big issue after 2008 was because for the very first time since Malaysia came into being, the UMNO and Barisan Nasional required the MPs from Sabah and Sarawak to stay in power. So that's the reason why in 2009, Malaysia Day was declared a public holiday, and then Prime Minister appointed the Speaker and the Deputy Speakers for Parliament are all people from Sabah and Sarawak. And he also increased the number of Sabah and Sarawak people in the cabinet. So you can see that before 2013, there was only one PBB ministers. In 2013, after the election, there were 4 PBB ministers. On top of that, of course, Najib set up the MA committee process to deal with the MA grievances that we're talking about this morning. You move on to 2018, you can see that, again, this issue became a key issue. What is interesting is that for the first time in Malaysia's political history, in terms of the big groups contesting to form the government, Pakatan Harapan actually put Sabah and Sarawak as one of the top 5 pillars in its election manifesto. If you were to go back before 2018, Sabah and Sarawak hardly featured any of the election manifesto, and certainly not any item in any of the Barisan Nasional campaign or the opposition campaign. So after Pakatan won power, of course, they got VK Liu from Sabah to set up a new MA63 committee with a specific task to try to resolve the issue in 12 months. So basically, they follow the same process as Najib. An MA committee was set up at the federal level and at the state level in Kuching, Kota Kinabalu, but they expanded the membership and they had 2 subcommittees underneath. So basically, after discussion, they came up with 21 issues that they wanted to resolve. Out of the 21 issues, 17 issues were resolved. But what is important to note about this committee is that some of the issues that they're trying to deal with are actually not related to the original MA63 issues, right? Things like oil and gas. But basically, the issue could not proceed because Pakatan lost power. But more importantly, it is my argument that then Prime Minister Mahathir was not really fully on board in dealing with this issue because he was not really in favor of granting more rights and power to Sabah and Sarawak. Mahathir is somebody who believes in centralization. He doesn't believe in decentralization. It was also during this period, just recently, that we saw the rise of state nationalism, especially GPS. As many of you know, after the fall of the Barisan Nasional government in 2018, the Sarawak Barisan Nasional immediately became GPS. So GPS plays a crucial role, even though they're part of the federal government, they're not part of a formal coalition member. but they were crucial in the formation of both the Muhyiddin government and the Ismail Sabri government. So you can see without GPS, this government would not survive. And return, of course, in terms of the demands made to the federal government are forced to cave in on items like the Petronas tax issue, and also calling Sabah and Sarawak administratively as a wilayah rather than a negeri. And of course, the Sarawak chief minister now is called Premier. This is only possible because the Malay political establishment is divided in Peninsular Malaysia. So right now in Peninsular Malaysia, it is clear that the Malay political establishment is divided between Bersatu, between UMNO, between PAS and PKR. And in some ways, I would argue that GPS became even more powerful after the state election of 2021, where GPS absolutely won a super majority in the Sarawak state elections. So under both the Muhyiddin Ismail Sabri government, they also carry on with the MA63 committee. Now the minister in charge is, of course, Dr. Mat Songkili from Sabah, and the deputy is from Sarawak. One of the items I think is important to recognize here is that thus far, the entire process has been kept secret. I'm one of the people who says that this should not be the case because there's really nothing that the committee deals with that have security implications for the country. So in fact, a lot of this should actually be reported or done in the open because there's really nothing to hide. I think it's very important that the people get involved, especially the people of Sabah and Sarawak, understand the process rather than just leave it behind closed doors. So one of the key items, one of the big victories that the Malayan political establishment want to talk about is, of course, the constitutional amendment. This idea, of course, is not new. VK Liu under Pakatan Harapan tried to do it, but they could not get support from GPS or the Sarawak Barisan Nasional, so the thing fell apart. But under the Muhyiddin and Ismail Sabri government that came in, they were able to pass this amendment. I think the way to understand this amendment is that basically it doesn't really change anything. The most important thing was that it sort of changed slightly the mindset and changed the way that the Malay political establishment look at the MA historical grievances. They sort of slowly becoming to understand why this is such an emotive or big issue in Sabah and Sarawak. Even in terms of changing slightly the Constitution Article 1, just put Sabah and Sarawak on a separate line. Of course, the amendments have other components, which is very important. So who is regarded as a native, especially in Sarawak, will now be decided under the Sarawak state government definition. And of course, GPS will take credit for this because the minister in charge who pushed the amendment through is, of course, from Sarawak. But for me, the most important thing, of course, is that although it's highly symbolic, at least now under the Constitution, the word Malaysia Agreement is now in the federal Constitution. So prior to this amendment, right, if you had looked through the Malaysian Constitution, you actually could not find the word Malaysia Agreement. So it's extremely important that we now have the word Malaysia Agreement in the federal Constitution. So this is what you wanted to hear from me. What is the political options? So I've given you the setting, the environment in which we're working under. So now I want to go through with you what are the political options to deal with these sort of grievances that I've just outlined in the last 20 minutes. So basically what I've done is put these political options into 4 different categories. The first one is easy political options. This thing can be done fairly easily. Second one is, of course, something that's much harder. Third and the fourth are things that are very, very hard or very, very hard to do. So these are the options 3 and 4 that I suppose a lot of people in this seminar want to hear about. So in terms of the easy political choices the government can make or the political class can make is, of course, they can rapidly implement the agreed items. As I mentioned, during the Pakatan time, they agreed on 17 out of 21 items. This was carried through the Muhyiddin and Ismail Sabri government. They are in the process of implementing it, but I understand there's some bureaucratic roadblocks. So if there's political will to implement this fast, they can actually do it. This is quite an easy political choice. The other area is, of course, autonomy in key appointments. You can give the appointments of things like the Director of Public Health, Education, State Police Chief, the University Vice Chancellors can all give this to the state government of Sabah and Sarawak. You can, of course, give more symbolic gestures by providing more TV and radio programs on Sabah and Sarawak funded by the federal government. And of course, you can always give one-off grants to build better infrastructure. You can also grant autonomy powers in areas like tourism, environment, which is not mentioned in the state list. As you know, the way federal state system works in Malaysia is that there's basically 3 lists about who controls what. The first is the federal list, the items controlled by the federal government. Second is the state list, items controlled by the individual states, and the concurrent list. Another item that can be done fairly easy is land. There's actually quite big blocks of land in both Sabah and Sarawak, which is under the control of the federal government. The federal government took this land away because the federal government claimed that they want to do something with this land. A lot of this land are actually left empty, and there's been some unhappiness in both state governments. So the federal government can actually return the unused lands and put it under the control of the state government of Sabah and Sarawak. Now, the second item that is much harder to deal with politically is, of course, the formula. As you know, the 40% rebate to Sabah is actually written in the Constitution. They've been arguing about this for quite a number of years. They cannot settle on a formula. I think this can be done quite easily because at the end of the day, it's really an accounting issue. It's really whether the government want to accept a formula put up by different parties. It's a choice. And this is not a very hard thing to do. It's really, it's actually a political choice. Second item is the role of Petronas in both Sabah and Sarawak. As you know, Sabah and Sarawak are really unhappy, as I mentioned, with the 5% royalty. So in some ways, you can actually, Petronas is 100% owned by the federal government and reports directly to the Prime Minister. You can actually tell Petronas that in terms of downstreaming all the contracts, you can actually channel this to Sabahans and Sarawakians. This can be done easily. So, but politically, it's much harder compared to the first list, but it can be done. In terms of the state civil service, you can allow the state civil service of Sabah and Sarawak to take over several federal functions. So the federal secretary in both states, you can make them into liaison roles rather than actually controlling some federal departments operating in both states. I think this will go a long way. Again, it's much harder to do politically, but can be done. And of course, you can put in Sabah and Sarawak representative in all major institutions. For example, there's no Sarawak representatives in the income tax board. And of course, as I mentioned earlier in the first part of my presentation, you can allow for more accurate history to be taught in schools throughout Malaysia. Now, item number 3, these are very hard political choices, and this is something that the federal government and the Malay political class will have to decide whether they want what to do. As I mentioned, currently things like tourism environment is not in the state list. You can actually create a special change, do amendment to federal constitution and put this under the state list, or you can create an amended state list, a special state list just for Sabah and Sarawak. Can be done, but it's a very hard political choice. Second area where it's a very hard political choice is to allow the state governments in both states to appoint judicial commissioners. Previously, they had the power, but it was taken away. And you have to put in the constitution to make sure that anything to do with cases related to Sabah and Sarawak, you require a judge from those states so that they have an understanding of the local context. Another very hard political choices, if you want to do, is you can change the Petronas Act and increase the royalty by changing the actual agreement itself. Again, it is a very hard political choices because I think there's very little appetite in the Malay political class to change the 5% thing. The other thing that you can change, of course, is the territorial CS and however this rights to the individual states. You can also give Sabah and Sarawak full autonomy in finance, education, and security. Security is a big issue in Sabah, especially with the so-called people coming over Mindanao, as you know, led to several big incidents in the last 10 years. You can also relook at the IGC recommendations Some of the IGC recommendations were actually not implemented in 1963. Some of them are actually quite interesting, and that requires, again, a change to the federal constitution. Again, a very hard political choice to be made. Now, the fourth one is a really, really hard political choices. This is where a lot of the key issues have to be dealt with. In item number 4, the very, very hard political choices, I would argue that at the present moment, I don't think there's a political appetite to deal with this, but these are some things that will have to be dealt with sooner or later. That even if you do not want to deal with it now, it will lead to situations where you have to deal with it over the long term. The first, of course, is the 1/3 of seats in Parliament. Initial discussion have started, but I would argue that there is no political appetite to do this in the near term. Certainly not after GE15. So don't expect to see this to change over the next 5 or 6 years. When it comes to the 1/3 seat issue, it is not as simple as people think, because it not only encompasses the Dewan Rakyat, but you also have to look at the issue of Dewan Negara, the upper house, the Senate. Right now, the big problem is the Senate, where Sabah and Sarawak each get 2 seats in the Dewan Negara. They selected 2. The other appointees from Sabah and Sarawak are actually appointed directly by the king. In the lower house, Sabah and Sarawak is about 26% of all the seats. So they want to increase it to 1/3. So the idea is that if Sabah and Sarawak control 1/3, this will go back to the original founding ethos in 1963, where Sabah, Sarawak, and Singapore control 1/3, so that the Malayan political establishment cannot amend the federal constitution without the support of Sabah, Sarawak, and Singapore. You can also look at new federal state structure. This is, again, something that is very, very difficult to do, because this will probably mean decentralization, and you may have to amend the federal constitution to codify the autonomy items. Another very hard political choices you have to do is the issue of complete political autonomy. There are groups in Sabah and Sarawak which argues that Malayan political parties should stay out of Sabah and Sarawak. Right now, Malayan political parties can be found in Sabah. They're part of the ruling government. But in Sarawak, there are Malayan political parties who are registered in Sarawak, for example, PAS, but they've never been able to capture power. But if you allow them complete political autonomy, this means that you won't allow these things these parties to set up branches in both Sabah and Sarawak. Now, in terms of very hard choices in Sabah, the big issue is, of course, the PTI issue. As I mentioned, 1/3 of Sabah's population is born outside Sabah. The question is that, do the federal government want to give Sabah complete autonomy on this issue? Because you're talking about things like revolting citizenship and mass deportation. Right now, all these powers are held by the federal government. So this is a very, very hard political choice that the federal government will have to deal with. Another very, very hard political choices the federal government have to deal with is, of course, in Sabah, they're calling for the return of the Labuan Island to the Sabah state. There is increasingly political consensus in Sabah that giving Labuan to the federal authorities was a mistake, because the original rationale for giving, of course, is that Labuan will be turned into a big, a big successful offshore financial center and duty-free zone. That has never happened. Very hard political choices. What do you do with the role of Islam or Islamic authorities? Sarawak is the only state without state religion, while Islam is the official state religion in Sabah. So what role do you want to give to Islam or the Islamic authorities? As I mentioned earlier, one of the original things in MA63, of course, it stated quite clearly that there was not supposed to be a state religion in both states. Another very hard political choice is that you have to consciously not integrate Sabah and Sarawak and allow them to grow their own political culture. Here I'm talking about the grievance I talk about, which is the export of the Malayan political culture or Malayan political model into Sabah and Sarawak. There's a very strong push to adopt the same political culture. And one of the hard political choices, which is very difficult, is that you leave Sabah and Sarawak alone and let them build their own political culture. Another very, very hard thing that you have to deal with is whether you want to guarantee certain number of people from Sabah and Sarawak in the federal cabinet. Under the Malaysian system, it's widely understood that in terms of appointments to the federal cabinet, it is at the absolute discretion or the prerogative of the Prime Minister. If you treat Sabah and Sarawak as equal partner, then you might want to look at the issue of whether you want to guarantee a quota in the federal government. Again, very, very hard political choices. And finally, there's been talk about a new MA agreement. But I can tell you that although there's talk about this, there is no support among the political class in Sabah and Sarawak to relook at the agreement. So these are the very hard political choices. So my final comment on MA63 grievances and the political choices is that we have reached an interesting milestone. As I mentioned, this issue has blown up at the federal level in 2008 because you require the MPs from Sabah and Sarawak to stay in power. So since then, they play a major role. Now, this coming GE15 will be interesting because there are some people saying that, the Malay community in Peninsular Malaysia, the Malay voters do not like a lot of things that's been happening for the last few years, where we had lots of political instability, and that they may help Barisan Nasional or Perikatan Nasional or whoever get 2/3 majority. If one political entity wins 2/3 majority, then I can guarantee you that the MA63 issues will be completely sidelined. Because once they no longer requires the MPs from Sabah and Sarawak to stay in power, they will just sideline the MA63 issues. I've spoken to some members of the Malay political class, and the impression I get from them is that a lot of them are also hold the view that the 2021 amendments is enough to satisfy Sabah and Sarawak for now. So there's very little appetite to give in more to the demands of Sabah and Sarawak. So the best case scenario for GE15 is, of course, that Sabah and Sarawak continue to hold power. In other words, the political establishment in Peninsular Malaysia do not get a clear majority, and they require people on Sabah and Sarawak to stay in power. So they have to look at the MA grievances seriously. So to summarize up, I think it is quite clearly in terms of the political options, they require a real mindset change among the Malayan political establishment, especially the Malay political establishment that is dominant in Peninsular Malaysia. This may require the notion or the acceptance of this idea of equal partnerships. And the key issue is really the ideology of Kebangsaan Melayu Islam and whether you can force the people of Sabah and Sarawak to accept this. Clear mindset change, of course, require thinking that the Federation of Malaysia, when it was established in 1963, was really built on diversity, not on this idea that we're trying to create a Malay state. So if you want to read some of my writings on MA63, you can just Google ResearchGate James Chin 7, and all my writings are public. They're all there for everyone to read. So thank you very much again for the kind invitation from the Sabah Sarawak Unit in the Prime Minister's Department, and I'll hand back to the host. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Thank you, Prof, for sharing with us. Just now, Professor James outlined a few grievances about MA63, his own personal opinion. We might agree to disagree or disagree to agree, but let us listen to our next speaker, yang berbahagia Datin Dr. Faridah Jalil. Terima kasih, Prof, kerana sudi bersama kita pada hari ini. Ya, saya baca sedikit mengenai Profesor Datin Dr. Faridah Jalil. Datin adalah anak kelahiran Port Dickson, Negeri Sembilan, ya, Datin. Dan beliau baru sahaja bersara daripada jawatan beliau sebagai profesor di Fakulti Undang-Undang Universiti Kebangsaan Malaysia ataupun UKM. Datin banyak membuat kajian dan menulis mengenai perkara mengenai federalism dan perlembagaan, ya. Beliau juga banyak memberi sumbangan, ya, di peringkat kebangsaan seperti dalam Bar Council Disciplinary Board, Expert Panel of Law and Sharia Law Program Standard, Malaysia Qualifying agensi antara, dan banyak lagi ya. Dan beliau ialah pemegang ijazah undang-undang Universiti Kebangsaan Malaysia UKM. Beliau juga pernah menuntut di London School of Economics, United Kingdom, dan mempunyai PhD Doctorate in Law, University of Warwick, United Kingdom. Dipersilakan Batin Doktor. Thank you very much.
Assalamualaikum, salam sejahtera, selamat pagi. Thank you, Norrizan, for the introduction. I'm happy to be with all of you today to share my opinion on the political problems and grievances on MA63. So this is I think is a very significant topic because we are approaching Malaysian Day. So every time when 16 September come pointing out his head, so people will start talking about this again and again. So but I might I'm very glad to the introduction made by Prof James. I think that is a very good introduction. So I might not want to repeat whatever had been said by Prof James. So I think because our us had a very quite clear view on the historical aspect of the formation of Malaysia in 1963. So but my comment about the formation of 1963 will be like is it so now I can't move. So is it like is it a wrong beginning, or is it a good start? So this is questions that I have in my mind every time when I look at the issue about MA63 or the formation of Malaysia in 1963, because we can see that the problems or the conflict that we have, the controversy that we are facing is not just within the new federation that is going to be formed, but also internationally, especially from our neighbor Philippines and Indonesia. So from within we have of like rejection or oppositions from Kelantan, which is part of the Federation of Malaya, and then we have Sabah, and also Sarawak, Brunei. There are a very sort of like unconsensus opinion about the formation of Malaysia. And in my observation, what we are facing at the moment is actually the 20% of groups of people who have sort of like skepticism, or they don't really agree to the formation of Malaysia. And despite of there is an international intervention to assess the acceptance of people in Sabah, Sarawak, and also in Singapore about Malaysia. So we have like there is a small bunch like 20% who really say that we don't really agree. We have a reservation about it, and if possible, we would like to be independent first before we join Malaysia. So for me, whatever problem that we have here is because of throughout Malaysia, 1963 till 2021-22, these matters had not been addressed carefully, and delicately or diligently, by the federal government, as well as the political people in Sabah, Sarawak, and also probably from Semenanjung, Malaysia. So I think Prof James has already talked about the sitting of in Parliament. So we can see that actually when it comes to number of seats, Sabah and Sarawak has a big portion of it. So this is just the background of it. So they have a big portion of the seat. Thus, logically, so it is, as Prof James say, what wanted demand of the seats. So probably it might not be that difficult for Sabah and Sarawak to sort of like to bang, okay, for it at this moment, okay. But again, it's okay, depend on the political scenario. I am not a political person, okay, I am a legal person, so my observation will be slightly skewed toward, okay, what is said by the constitution and the law, okay. So, and then again, okay, we have this, okay, in the Senate, as again had been said by Prof James just now, okay, they only have like entitled to 2 seats, okay, for Sabah and 2 seats for Sarawak, which, okay, if we look at the proportionality, okay, to the size of the states, okay, it is quite disproportionate, okay, so they require more. So, and then, okay, I just wondering, okay, when we talk about whose grievances, okay, we talk about grievances, whose grievances, okay, are we talking about the people, are we talking about the political elite, and are we talking about the Sabah and Sarawak diaspora, okay, those who are Sabahan and Sarawakian, okay, but they are not living in Sabah and Sarawak. That's, okay, probably, okay, their viewpoint on what Sabah and Sarawak should get, probably not to say that, okay, incompatible with what happened, okay, in Sabah, Sarawak, and also in the Federation as a whole, in Malaysia as a whole, but, okay, it might be influenced, okay, by external factors, okay, by external factors. But grievances from the people, for me, it is very important, because, okay, these are the people who are going to suffer, okay, if, okay, they fail to get, and the government, okay, fail, okay, to deliver whatever their responsibility is stated under the law and under the constitution. So this is like the obligation, okay, of the federal government and the state government, okay, over the people. And the political elite, okay, so I think a politician, they does not have a very good sort of like, okay, status, okay, in the eyes of the people at the moment, okay, due to many things, okay, that had taken place, okay, not just in Peninsular Malaysia, but also in Sabah and Sarawak. So when we look at whose grievances are we talking about, so we have to be really careful about it, okay, and it need to be addressed, okay, delicately. Okay, so I conducted a research in 2012, okay, on federalism and social cohesion. Okay, so this is a research throughout Malaysia. Okay, and we have a special session with people in Sabah and Sarawak. Okay, all categories, okay, of people we met. Okay, the politician, okay, the ordinary person, the state government, and some from, okay, the rumah panjang, okay, at the remote area in Sabah and Sarawak. But, okay, the concentration here is on social cohesion, okay, how federalism can improve social cohesion. And of course, okay, as a legal person, I injected a constitutional element in it. So based on, okay, what our finding in 2012, okay, so this is, okay, the dissatisfaction. So this is probably what we can take as grievances, okay, grievances of the people in Sabah and Sarawak from, okay, various level of life, okay, various strata of life. So of course, okay, financial provisions, okay, become the highest, the most things that are they are concerned, because financial economic sector will determine, okay, the success of a nation. Okay, this is how we understand. Okay, money is, okay, so we don't say that money is king, the money is king, but, okay, so if you have, okay, the appropriate fund, okay, to develop a country, therefore you probably, okay, can assist, okay, the disadvantage, okay, among the society. Then second one is about state autonomy. So they keep repeating. I think, okay, if we understand properly what Prof James, okay, had said before, so this is also one of, okay, the grievances and the challenge, okay, politically, okay, that need to be resolved. And then centralization of power. So centralization of power here, okay, means, okay, it's not just, it can be political power. Okay, it can also be on when it comes to administration power. We know that Malaysia, okay, is a centralized federalism. So where the federal government possess bigger power, and in some situation they can override, especially during emergency, they can override the power of the state. Sarawak had experienced that, Sabah had experienced that, Kelantan also experienced that. So during COVID-19, we experienced that throughout the nations. So this is centralization of power can take place. For a good reason, and also for merely just to satisfy a political mileage of those people in power. Then legal literacy. Number 4 is legal literacy. So whatever changes, grievances that Prof James highlighted will be closely aligned to this legal literacy. So if people understand what the Constitution say, what lies in the federal constitution about MA63, therefore they can sort of like claim more on their rights. The state of Sabah and the state of Sarawak can probably be on a better position when it comes to claiming their rights about state autonomy. And availability of information. So I think this is something that because of social media, it is easy for us to get information. So I don't think that nowadays people say that, well, we don't know what happened in Semenanjung or what happened in Sabah and Sarawak, because it is accessible. So information is accessible. Well, we acknowledge that in remote area in Sabah and Sarawak, probably internet connection is not there, or is very weak. But again, those people who live in the city area, they can realize the information to all these people. So, and then the unequal treatment toward the state. Again, this has been sort of like elaborated by Professor James. So we can see that which I will also cover. So Sabah and Sarawak always claim for more allocations, fund allocation from Malaysia, and they want to have more controls about tourism, environment, logging. More of is like natural resources. Tourism, I think, is the highest contributing economic development for Sabah and Sarawak in this case. And then political attitude. That is something that is beyond our control, because we sometimes elected the individual to be our representative. So we have to really study about who are all these persons that we are going to elect. So from my observation, following politics in Sabah and Sarawak, I can make a conclusion that whoever previously, so probably nowadays things have changed. Previously, from Tun Datuk Mustafa, we have all these political elites. Tun Donald Stephen, Tawis Leo Mogi, Rahman Yaakob, Taib Mahmud, Musa Ahmad. So all these people, once they are appointed to the post, to become the representative of the people, they will be inclined towards the federal government. So they will come federal government friends. So they will try to sort of adjust their action to fulfill and oblige whatever instruction given by the federal government. So for whatever reason, they only know, probably because of power, but probably at the same time they feel that this is the only way for them to get more benefit from the federal. They will probably feel that the state will enjoy more funding, more assistance from the federal government, despite to the extent of denying the progress and the self-development of the people in Sabah and Sarawak. So therefore we can see that there are sort of like continuous dissatisfaction among the people in Sabah and Sarawak, okay, about these particular matters, okay. And the grand bargaining process, okay, I don't think that there is sort of like a grand bargaining process in the sense that it involves, okay, the people at large. It being conducted, okay, by those, okay, at the top, okay, during the formation of Malaysia. And as said by Professor Jane just now, some of them, the negotiation takes behind closed door, okay. And the only time, okay, that they want to legalize or legitimize, okay, whatever had been conducted is by bringing in representation from the United Nations to test on the acceptance of the people. So whether it is true, whether it is valid, or whether it is done, okay, fairly, so it is now history. But we know that, okay, as I have said before, whatever had been is raised, okay, nowadays is because of the 20%, okay, unresolved opposition or rejection in 1960, which is not given attention, okay, after Malaysia is formed. Okay. So from here, okay, from the research that we conducted, okay, this is what we gathered. Okay, so most of them are dissatisfied with the operation of federalism, and federalism, okay, in 2012, okay, about 2012, it is under attack. And then the federal government had been using its financial powers and increased legislative power to intervene in areas of state responsibility. So this is an encroachment. So, but at the same time, to be fair, okay, to the state, okay, in Peninsular Malaysia, okay, the same thing is happening, okay, at among, okay, the state, okay, whether the federal government is, okay, inch by inch, okay, interfere, okay, within, okay, the power that is supposed to be enjoyed, okay, by the state. Okay. And then there is excessive intervention. So we know that there is JKK been established previously, okay, and that sometime, okay, they just set up, okay, a committee just to make sure that, okay, whatever money that they send, okay, to the state, especially those who does not share the same political party that rule the country, the state, okay. So they want to just want to control the distribution of money. So it happened again, especially in Kelantan and Terengganu at one moment. Okay, and then and we can see that centralism, okay, appears to be the order of the day. Okay, so this is very, very significant. Okay, very glaring, okay, in Malaysia. So this is the solution, okay, that they give. Okay, so states are given equal treatment. Okay, the Schedule 9, okay, must be observed by the Federation closely. More power, okay, should be given to the state, and there should be more discussion among the federal and the state. Okay, so this again, if you look at, okay, the solution, okay, the grievances, okay, that Prof James, okay, is offering, okay, towards the end of the lecture of his presentation. So this is some of, okay, the grievances which need to be addressed, and probably, okay, it will take, like, whether it's hard, okay, very, very hard, okay, or it is quite easy, okay, to be done. Okay, so but for me, okay, more power is given to the state. Okay, this is a very, very hard, okay, a process, okay, that we need to take. Okay. And then, okay, in some, okay, so this is our finding. Okay, there need to be a reallocation of roles between federal and state governments. Okay, and there should be a reform of federal and state financial relations. Okay, improvement in the mechanism for intergovernmental cooperation. And then a need for constitutional reform on federal-state relation. So this is the last one. This is a very difficult one. Okay, constitutional reform on federal and state relation, because, like, okay, it will require the constitution to be like unfolded. Okay, the provision need to be there down, okay, one by one, and we have a new structure of federal constitution. So will decentralization, okay, will be the way forward? I haven't put so much thinking about this at the moment. Okay, so this probably requires further reading and research on my part. Okay, then again, when we want to conduct all the changes, whether it's politically or based on constitutional amendment, or legal, from legal perspective, so there are quite a number of questions, that need to be asked. I asked this question in 2012, and when I re-look into this every year, I will keep asking the same question. Okay, so if we want to have a new structure of power allocation, in the federal state list, in the distribution of power between the federation and state, so will the individual state forming Malaysia, will be able to face the challenge of globalization alone, because we know that now globalization is eating up all small countries. So if we stand alone, in the small size, can we face that? We see what happened to UK when they leave European Union. So this is like Brexit. Have quite a great political implication. On UK economic. And then is the individual states able to bear the expenditure of managing a state alone? So again, it's a question about finance. Is the individual state able to protect the security of the state alone? So we have this Philippine claim, the Sulu Sultanate claim, over Sabah. So will Sabah able to face that on their own, without the assistance from the federal government? When did it come to when did not come to grand bargaining process? But during the formation of Malaysia, there is an intensive bargaining process. So at that time, when Malaysia is formed, there might not be a grand bargaining process, but there is an intensive bargaining process. So, but probably, we historically, we do understand that when Sabah and Sarawak, was asked, to form Malaysia as well as Singapore and Brunei, the political awareness, the political literacy of people in Sabah and Sarawak, probably is still low. The same like when Malaysia, when Federation of Malaya gains independence. So this require a long process to develop. But I think nowadays, in 2022, they had seen a lot of political turbulence taken place in the federation, and how Sabah and Sarawak have been treated under the federation. So they have become more alert about the political game of the federation over Sabah and Sarawak. Therefore, they build up the understanding, and they have more resistance on what is forced over them by the Malaysians. Therefore, then thereon we can see that a slogan like Sabah for Sabahan, Sarawak for Sarawakian come up. I don't because I studied about social cohesion, I researched about social. I don't think that when they say that Sabah for Sabahan or Sarawak for Sarawakian is in terms of like the rejection to the whole of what happened in Malaysia, the structure of Malaysia, but probably to certain part, certain parts, that have a very bad implication on, how people treated them. Of course, if people treated you badly, resistance, is the automated reaction. So I just talk about economy. I'm not an expert in economy, but this is what I read from those, that this data is gathered from Department of Statistics. Sabah and Sarawak perform quite well, when it comes to economy. I think comparatively to other states, they are among 6 states that contributed greatly towards the success of Malaysian economy. So something that Sabah and Sarawak should be proud of. okay, and this can be a good start for them, okay, if you want to gain more control, okay, over the states, okay. However, okay, this is inflation, the consumer price, okay, the inflation rate when it comes to consumer. This is the things that worried, okay, much, okay. So probably in this part, okay, they need more cooperation, okay, between the federation, okay, and Sabah and Sarawak, okay. Again, okay, the issue that I think we have been talking about, okay, in Malaysia at this moment, okay, corruption, have-been politician. So this is because there is an allegation that, okay, the federal government being sort of like taking all the money and not distributed it well, okay, to Sabah and Sarawak. I think, okay, the distribution probably had been done, okay, according to what is provided in the federal constitution, but okay, there is, okay, sort of like a misuse when it comes to distribution, okay. So it's not just happening in Sabah and Sarawak, it's also happening in other states, okay, in Malaysia too. Okay, so some people, okay, some political elite, okay, they probably take opportunity from there because of lack of check and balance, okay, in terms of how money is distributed, okay, when it was sent, okay, to the state government, okay, for distribution and for development, okay. So renegotiating MA63, okay, so Prof James also talk about renegotiating MA63. I don't think that if we renegotiate, we are negotiating MA63. Probably, okay, we will negotiate, okay, about the distribution of power based on there will be a new slate, okay. We probably won't get MA63 because the situation at the moment is very different from 1963. Okay, so it will be on a new footing. Okay, but okay, I would say that, okay, and the constitutional amendment, okay, taken place recently, okay, on Article 1(2), and one subclause 2. Okay, so where is which bring clarity to many things. Okay, and again, okay, because we know that people have been wondering, okay, because we have been like Sabah and Sarawak have been said, no, we are not, okay, states, okay, we are partner, okay, so we are partner, okay, to the federation, okay, when we are partner when we are forming Federation of Malaysia 1963. So the amendment taken place, I think this is the second time they tried, okay, once, okay, in 2018, if I'm not mistaken, but it fails, okay. But okay, that recently, okay, it passed through. And again, okay, the word Malaysia Day had been defined. Okay, so before this, we are wondering when is actually Malaysia Day. Okay, so now it has been defined. It's 16th day of September 1963. So it is spelled, okay, it's spelled clearly. So Malaysia had been sort of like, the Federation of Malaysia had been, as Prof Jane said, being embedded, okay, being engraved, okay, in the federal constitution, okay, officially, okay. And then they talk about what is the federation, okay, what is the meaning of the federation, okay. So you can see a little bit of history about, okay, the federation, okay, first established under Federation of Malaya Agreement 1957, okay, and then how it expanded. So I think this is a historical narration, okay, about the formation of Malaysia, okay, in the federal constitution, okay. So nobody can change, okay, this okay, except unless, okay, the provision is amended, okay. And also there is an amendment about Article 161A, okay, where it clarify, okay, who is what is the meaning of native Sabah. Of Sarawak, sorry. Okay, I think Sabah had already had it very clear, okay, previously, but now, okay, they want Sabah is having the same, okay, provision, okay, with that, okay. So then the political option. So they had been mentioned, okay, by Prof James just now, okay, 1/3 of parliamentary state, okay. So now, okay, they are, I think Sabah and Sarawak have been talking about, okay, extra seats, okay, Sabah and Sarawak should get extra. I'm not sure whether, okay, delineation of constituency can be made, okay, before, okay, the next general election, okay, the 15th general election. But there is a request, okay, there is a request for them for more seats, okay, to be created. And we can't have it, we can't have it in the constitution, okay, it can be written in the constitution, but the political process, okay, to get it into the constitution, okay, being formalized into the constitutional provision might be very, very difficult, okay. So I think because it is not just about Sabah and Sarawak, okay, other states might say that, well, okay, we want to have a review on our constituency too, the number of constituency too. So it is not an easy way, okay, to get, okay. And then, okay, so this is restoring Sabah and Sarawak rights on parliamentary seats. Okay, so again, okay, this is related, okay, to the seats, okay, that they are having, okay, in parliament. Okay, so this again, okay, reflect back in my second and third, okay, slides, okay, about the seats. So the number of seats, okay, that they will get, okay, will be different, okay, from what they have been getting at the moment. Okay, so but my biggest concern, okay, actually about the way we resolve Sabah and Sarawak issue politically is anti-hopping law. So I know that, okay, Sarawak has this anti-hopping law, but I think one unique political scenario in Sabah and Sarawak is that they can split up the party overnight. Okay, they can come together overnight. So this is something very, I think, very amusing to me. Okay, when I look at it. So I'm just wondering, okay, how does, okay, this party changes, okay, the political party changes and breakup, okay, will take place, okay, in Sabah and Sarawak in the next general election. So I haven't sort of like cracked my head, okay, into it, but I think it will be very interesting, okay, to see, okay, with the latest constitutional amendment on anti-hopping, okay. So how does, okay, the political players, okay, in Sabah and Sarawak will react to that, okay. So then my takeaway, okay, for my share today is, okay, political grievances, okay, and political resolution, okay. We relies on the individual politician, okay, on their behavior, on their standard of morality, on their belief, okay, on their spirit at that time, okay. But again, we have to remember that if there is no accountability and if there is no there is no good system of check and balances, okay, the demand for more autonomy or whatever demand, okay, that will give more power to Sabah and Sarawak when it comes to financial, or okay, or autonomy in terms of education, in terms of land, okay, it will benefit probably just the political elites, okay, but what about the general public? So there must be a good system of accountability. There must be a good system of check and balance at the state level too. Okay, and therefore I'm a bit skeptical about the political solutions. Okay, is it practical? Okay, for saving the people this threat and for us to cure underdevelopment taken place in Sabah and Sarawak. Okay, because we have seen many sort of like unwanted incidents, okay, taken place. Okay, money being, somebody just simply take away the money and people still suffers. Okay, so therefore for me, its political solution tends to be murky. Okay, it based on compromise. Sometimes it is probably is not a sincere compromise. Okay, sometimes they have to throw away their principles, okay, just to get what they want. So the solution tend to be messy and it will be not uniform. It is not uniform. Okay, so you will get different solution according to whoever sit at the negotiation table. So it tends to be very confusing to me. Okay, then again, and I also have a question about this. Okay, as I've said before, when we talk about renegotiating, renegotiating, okay, the distribution of power, okay, or whatever special rights, okay, that Sabah and Sarawak have, or the autonomy that Sabah and Sarawak have compared to the other state in Malaysia. Because for me, Malaysia is not just about Sabah and Sarawak, okay. And when we look at federalism, okay, because we are a federal government, okay. When we design legal and political safeguard, okay, we are not just trying to design about what is the best kind of relationship between the state and the federal, but okay, we are also talking about the relationship among the state, okay, because it is not if, okay, for example, if Sabah and Sarawak get whatever they means and they can manage them, okay, accordingly, okay, in accordance with the law and good governance, okay. So what about other states? Okay, so what about other states? So we are not talking about a democratic system or fair system for Sabah and Sarawak, okay, a fair and equal distribution for Sabah and Sarawak, but we are talking about fair and equal distribution for other states, okay, in the Peninsula Malaysia, because we know that, okay, from previous practices, okay, there are states that been sort of denied, okay, sort of financials, okay, financial allocation just because of, okay, the state government differs, okay, with the federal government, okay. So Kelantan, for example, Terengganu, okay, for example, had go through all this process. So it can happen, okay, it can happen not just Sabah and Sarawak, it happens, okay, in Semenanjung, Malaysia too. Okay? So I think that is just my sharing for the day. So we can have a discussion about it. Just thank you very much, and thank you, Prof. James, okay, for you to. I think you guide me quite a lot, okay, when I do my presentation too. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Bahagia Latin Doctor, for giving us all the interesting pointers to us for us to share. Thank you also, Professor James, for sharing with us. Very interesting, Professor James line up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points in his summary. Yang mengatakan last point itu begitu menarik bagi saya, except the Malaysian Federation was built on diversity, ya, begitu beautiful perkataan tu. Malaysian Federation was built in diversity, dan Prof juga mengatakan Malaysia need check and balance between the states, and we are supposed to have a fair distribution among the state, Prof. Itu Prof punya take away for the day, okay? So I will open our discussion now to everybody. I'm sure some have burning question to our two distinguished scholars. Professor James come all the way today from Hobart, Tasmania. He was telling me Hobart is very cold, 10 degrees, Prof. I am so pleased that you can come over to us today. I enjoy listening to your talk, to Professor James and also Yang Bahagia Datin Doctor. Yeah, they complement each other, and these things to ponder. Yeah, because we are indeed a nation of diversity, and we need to move forward to. And we are going, as we are aware, 16th September, we are celebrating Malaysia Day. So kita akan sama-sama mengibarkan bendera, iaitu untuk menunjukkan kesetiaan kita kepada negara kita yang berdaulat lagi merdeka. Ya. So I open now the floor to the audience question. Ya. Ada dah soalan ya? Saya tengok ni. Okay, kita ada question untuk Professor James Chin. Ya? When Malaysia Agreement 1963 came into force on 16th September, did it mark the end of the Federation of Malaya, or is the Federation of 1948-97 and the Federation of 1963 form of inclusiveness, continuous support, and not separated from each other? Prof. James?
Okay, so if you look at it purely from a legal aspect, the Federation of Malaysia is a totally new entity. It is not what do you call it, addition to Federation of Malaya. The reason why there is a lot of confusion is because they use the template of the Federal Constitution of Malaya and use it as the what they call the baseline for the new constitution. But legally speaking, it is a totally new agreement, so it's a totally new political entity.
Thank you, Prof. Okay, next question. Okay, ini untuk Datin. Dia kata untuk Datin, adakah persekutuan Malaysia merupakan negara persekutuan atau sebenarnya hybrid mixture of federation and confederation? Terdapat peruntukan seperti perkara 95C dalam Perlembagaan Persekutuan yang memberikan senarai perundangan persekutuan diserahkan kepada negeri, ya, diserahkan pada negeri. Perkara 80/5 perkiraan kuasa eksekutif antara persekutuan dan negeri. Perkara 108 jadual ke-10 persekutuan boleh serah hasil-hasil tertentu kepada negeri. Bolehkah bincang melalui Majlis Keuangan Negara? Kelihatan seperti wujud elemen sentra sama seperti yang diamalkan oleh negara konfederasi. Thank you. Begitu panjang soalan tu, Prof. Boleh jadi seorang yang mahir dari segi undang-undang.
Okey, sebenarnya kalau kita lihat persekutuan, okey, so kita kata persekutuan sebenar atau sebenarnya hybrid. So, persekutuan sekarang ni dia dah banyak evolution, okay? So dia dah banyak evolusi. Jadi kita tak boleh nampak persekutuan dalam satu bentuk yang seragam kepada semua negara. Dan persekutuan tu dia ada kalanya dia akan juga mempunyai, kita akan lihat dalam dia tu ciri-ciri yang lain. Seperti tadi kata confederation. Dan dalam Perlembagaan Malaysia kadang-kadang kita lihat dia bukan setakat ada confederation, kadang-kadang dia ada juga merupakan seperti unitary state. Okay? So ini ada kaitan dengan proses bagaimana perlembagaan itu tadi dirundingkan dalam dia membentuk persekutuan itu tadi. Jadi persekutuan ni kalau kita faham pada masa sekarang ni, kalau kita lihat di seluruh dunia ni, dia tak ada satu sistem yang sama. Jadi dia kebanyakan adalah gabungan ataupun dia adalah merupakan kepada susunan kuasa yang dipersetujui di antara anggota-anggota yang membentuk persekutuan tersebut. So, kita boleh bersetuju cara macam-macam. Dan dalam persekutuan negara, persekutuan Malaysia, umumnya memang persekutuan mempunyai kuasa yang besar. Tetapi dari beberapa segi, okay, masih ada lagi ruang di mana persekutuan boleh merundingkan. So, kita boleh kata di Malaysia kita ada cooperative federalism juga, di mana persekutuan yang menggalakkan kerjasama di antara negeri dan juga persekutuan dalam beberapa aspek. Seperti tadi dalam ni kata keuangan memang ada. Dalam beberapa keadaan persekutuan boleh membuat undang-undang bagi pihak negeri, boleh mengurus takbir bagi pihak negeri. So jadi masih lagi berada dalam kerangka persekutuan. Terutama tidak baiknya adalah kerana dia boleh membangkitkan kepada rasa ketidakpuasan hati kepada negeri-negeri yang membentuk persekutuan tersebut. Seperti macam kita sedang bincanglah, okay, the dissatisfaction in Sabah and Sarawak, the grievances in Sabah and Sarawak, and at the same time okay, grievances daripada negeri-negeri yang membentuk persekutuan di Semenanjung sendiri. Okay, terima kasih.
Chin ada soalan untuk Prof. Tadi dalam summary Prof menggariskan 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 summary ya. Dan summary Prof yang kedua tu ya, Prof menyatakan accept the notion of equal partner. Ada orang bertanya ni, hello Prof, Boleh tak explain sedikit lagi panjang mengenai apa Prof maknakan equal partner? Prof tak?
Yeah. So what I mean by equal partnership is that I'm talking about a mindset change. So when you talk about political options, you really thinking about people make choices politically. So if you want to make choice dealing with grievances for Sabah and Sarawak, this requires the Malay political establishment in Peninsular Malaysia to change the mindset. The mindset is that, Sabah and Sarawak join Malaya to create this Federation Malaysia. So if you change your mindset, means that you regard Sabah and Sarawak as equal partners in the formation of Federation Malaysia, and therefore whatever you want to do with the country going forward, you have to consult. That attitude does not exist currently.
Ada peserta kita yang bertanya, Prof juga ada mention about security to Sabah to be handed over to the state. Can you explain further on this? Maknanya saya yakin saudara yang bertanya ni ingin bertanya, adakah federation tidak involved sama sekali dalam security untuk Sabah ataupun joint venture itu, I think what he meant by this.
Yeah. So if you look at the way the laws are written, ultimately in terms of security of the states of Sabah and Sarawak, is actually vested in the hands of the Home Minister. At the state level, you have the State Security Committee. Even though the Chief Minister in theory is supposed to chair the committee, the federal government can override it at any time. Secondly, if you look at ESCOM, which is the unit that was established to stop the incursion of negative groups from Mindanao, you find that at the end of the day, ESCOM reports to Kuala Lumpur. I'm talking about the final say. It doesn't report to Kota Kinabalu. So this is what I mean when I talk about security of the state. You also find this, again, it's not unique to Sabah and Sarawak, also in Peninsular Malaysia. You'll find that all the security forces based in Sabah and Sarawak, ultimately they report back to Kuala Lumpur. They don't report to the state governments of Sabah and Sarawak.
Okay, thank you, Prof. I hope answer peserta kita tadi punya question. Satu question lagi untuk Datin. Greetings, Datin. Would you agree that based on federal constitution, there are legal recognition of Malaysia as an asymmetrical federation, whereby Sabah and Sarawak has a special constitutional position? Yeah, Datin, this is for you.
Well, I think when it comes to Sabah and Sarawak, I think because it is, I will say it's a asymmetrical federation. Okay, so because Sabah and Sarawak is given a special position. It is clearly stated in the federal constitution. We have to acknowledge that. Okay, so as the only things that we are having now is that constitutional guarantee, okay, put in the constitution is being honored, okay, by the federation or by the government of state of Sabah themselves. Okay, so this is I think it is quite okay. Prof James, okay, from Semenanjung, we always say that Sabah and Sarawak has a special position because it is in the constitution. It said that special position of Sabah and Sarawak. It is written there. Okay, so the only problem we have is how it is implemented. Okay, so thank you.
Datin, can you please, maybe our audience would like to know more detail on special position. Maybe they want to know, what you really the Constitution mean by special position of Sabah and Sarawak.
Okay, I think the most glaring thing is about immigration power. Okay, so for power to control immigration. Okay, so we know that, okay, if we are from Malaysia, so before this, okay, we have to have a passport to enter Sabah and Sarawak. Nowadays, okay, we can have our immigration card, okay, or we just show our my card, okay, at the immigration. So that is one thing very clear. And you have like the case of Site Kecil, we say that nobody that is the power of the state, Sabah and Sarawak, to control immigration is beyond judicial review. You cannot ask if you are denied the right to enter Sabah and Sarawak. You cannot go to court and ask court to judicially review the decision made by the immigration in Sabah and Sarawak. So that is one example. Secondly, when it comes to Borneonisation of public service, it had been acknowledged by the court that Borneonisation is a legal policy, so it must be honored. You cannot deny the rights of people in Sabah and Sarawak to be part of their public service. So it need to be protected. So their right is guaranteed. So this is two example of where the special position is given to them. But probably in other part it had been being less of like a neglecting. So but I'm talking about these two most obvious rights is enjoyed by Sabah as compared to the rest.
James, I noticed you also speak about Borneonisation in your presentation, which Datin also mentioned just now. What do you think about the process of Borneonisation so far in our country? Is it progressing, or you need more? Just to pick your brain. Yeah.
Okay. I think it's very important to define Borneonisation first before we can discuss whether it's successful or not. The problem now is that when you talk to Borneonisation, there are different definitions. Some people in Sabah and Sarawak regard Borneonisation is the number of Sabahans and Sarawakian serving at a senior level of the federal government, federal civil service, PTD officers, all that sort of thing. What I'm talking about is different. What I'm talking about is strictly related to the MA63 thing, which is that at the time of negotiations, the founders of the Federation from Sabah and Sarawak, when they talked about Borneonisation at that time, what they meant was that the British officers serving in the civil service of the colonial civil service in both Sabah and Sarawak, when they go, things like the Chief Secretary, State Financial Secretary, or when those position goes, you have to replace them with a local native, a local Sabahan or local Sarawakian, even if on paper they are less qualified. So this is what I mean by Borneonisation. There has been a court case in Sabah where two retired people have tried to sue on this issue of Borneonisation, whether the Sabah government have actually proceeded with Borneonisation since 1963. Unfortunately, the suit was thrown out at the initial hearing stage. So we don't have any legal precedence on this issue. Can I just quickly say something about the question just now about whether Sabah and Sarawak rights are enshrined in the Constitution? I think the problem is that there are lots of confusion over this. It's important to understand the actual process. So after the survey done by the Cobalt Commission, the UN team, once everybody agreed that the Federation will come to being, right? They set up a thing called Intergovernment Commission, IGC. There were 5 committees set up looking at different aspects of the findings of the ground, and they're supposed to use the findings on the ground to insert changes to the Malayan Constitution before it's adopted as the Constitution of Federation. A lot of the items that were discussed at the IGC or recommendation IGC was actually not inserted. So that's the reason why in my slides I talk about relooking at the IGC. Some of the items they asked for in the IGC never made it to the final version that was adopted on 16th of September. So I think going forward, I made the argument that it is not possible to relook at the IGC process because I think politically it's very messy. And you have to remember 2022 is very different from 1962-63. So it's not possible. One clean way, one very clean constitutional way of dealing with this is to take out all the existing amendments on Sabah and Sarawak and create a 4 list. As you know, the way the Malaysian Federation works is that you have a federal list, state list, concurrent list. You might want to adopt a special list for Sabah and Sarawak, but as my co-presenter, Dating, has mentioned, this is very, very problematic because other states with strong state nationalistic feelings like Johor and Kelantan may decided that we want to join the list as well for certain rights. So it is highly problematic, but that is one way to resolve these issues so that everybody can understand. I think the problem with the current debate MA63 is that all this confusion stems from the fact that based on three things. One is that people don't actually understand the history. That's why I talk a lot about teaching the correct history. Secondly, Malaysians always miss out the political issues from the legal issues. Once you mix these two up, then it becomes very messy. Because as Dating mentioned in her presentation, some of the issues are purely legal issues. But a lot of it in my presentation said that it is a political choice. So if you separate out the issues, then it becomes clearer. If you don't separate out the issues, if you don't understand the history and you don't understand the political administrative structure of the federation, plus the non-legal issues, then everything gets mixed up. So this is where people get mixed up, they get very passionate and they get very defensive. But I think it's important that we have a rational discussion on this issue, because whether you like it or not, this issue will be there for many years to come. And a very simple example of that is that if you go to Sabah and Sarawak today, right, you go to any political party, whether it's government, Pembakan, or whoever it is, everybody said that they are MA63 champion, but no details. They just said, oh, we're fighting for MA63, MA63. So this issue is always there in the background. And my contention, when I talk political options, that you have to choose, the political class have to choose whether you want to deal with it the easy way, the hard way, the really hard choices, whether you want to face. That is the point I'm making. I'm not trying to push one way or the other. I'm just explaining the situation, and try to make the issues, clarify the issues for the audience, because I think there is a lot of confusion, not only in Sabah and Sarawak, but also in Peninsular Malaysia.
Hello. Can I ask a question, Prof. Jen?
Yeah, sorry. Yes, Senator Dato'.
Yeah, this one is to Prof. James Chin.
I think getting too many questions.
This one is in relation to Act of Parliament in 1971, if I recall correctly, whereby Sabah and Sarawak was downgraded to be one of the 13 states. Now, with the recent change in the federal constitution to say that now Sabah and Sarawak has got back its status as equal partners, what is your view of this Act of Parliament 1971? Thank you.
Okay, so I think it happened in 75 or 76, not 71. The Constitution Amendment, the recent Constitution Amendment was, to me, was purely symbolic. It has no legal force. It has no, no financial commitments. Usually when you pass a law, there is one separate page that says the financial implications and what implication. This one was purely symbolic, but in some ways, it can also be beyond symbolic, because for the very first time, the word Malaysia Agreement is mentioned. The other big problem, as I mentioned, the confusion of the legal and the non-legal aspects, the political aspects, is that most people do not realize that there's never been a court case that deals with MA63 specifically in the Malaysian courts. So it's never been a precedence. So this thing has never been litigated. So there has been various attempts to litigate on MA63, but the courts have knocked it out because they said that the person filing the case have no local standing, to file the case. So if you really want a definite answer on whether MA63 is legally enforceable, the only easiest pathway, legally speaking, is for the Sarawak state government or the Sabah state government to file a lawsuit to the federal court. Because in Malaysia, we don't have a constitutional court. We have a federal court, and ask a very simple question. Is the Malaysia Agreement 63 legally enforceable? And if you get a clear answer either way, then you can say legally this is the way. Because right now, all the things I say, all the legal things Dating has said is our own expert opinion. It is not, there is no, legal case related to MA63 thus far in Malaysia. Currently, there is a group in Sarawak that has filed a case. In Sabah, there is a case, but that one deals specifically with just a 40% revenue rebate. But these cases, if they go forward, they wouldn't deal with the entire MA63, but they will shed light on certain aspects of MA63. Thank you.
There's so many questions addressed to you. I have another sort of a statement from Christine. Christine say here, Prof, matters on Borneonisation in 18 or 20 points briefly mention Borneonisation of the public service should proceed as quickly as possible. This referring to the existing federalized department during that time before Malaysia Day. That is her comment. Do you want to comment on that?
No, I mean, people are free to express their views. I strongly believe that everyone should be given the right to speak.
All right. Okay, another question. Okay, this is for Datin. Greeting, Datin Doctor. In your opinion, is Sabah and Sarawak is an equal partner of Federal of Malaya? This is his question. Mr. Lotte Belaut, is that his name? I hope I pronounce it correctly. Yeah.
I think Prof James had answered that too. That it is a partner. Okay, so I think that there should be a rationale why I'm saying that Sabah and Sarawak is an equal partner. Because Sabah and Sarawak is party to the negotiation. So meaning that if normally you will bring those people who regarded as equal to negotiation compared to the states in Malaysia. Yeah, the state in Federation of Malaya. They are represented by the Federation of Malaya. So you can see that they come as a group. But Sabah, Sarawak, Singapore, and Brunei at that time, in the early negotiation, they come as they table what their demands, and their request, if Malaysia want to be formed. So with that, so I personally, I regarded that Sabah and Sarawak is an equal partner. And I think it's a very courteous recognition, to Sabah and Sarawak, to regard them, as an equal partner. We need to understand too, Kelantan dissatisfied, with the formation of Malaysia. They went to court and challenged. But since, but we know that they fail, in their challenge, to contest the legality of the forming of Malaysia at that time. So because the court say that they can be represented. But for me it is quite interesting. If you read carefully the court decision, the judge deciding whether they say that possibly if the matter does not come to them at during the eve of the formation of Malaysia, the outcome of the case will probably be very different. So this is so indirectly saying that, well, probably it can be challenged. Yeah. So it's just a matter of timing. So thank you.
Thank you, Datin Doctor. I promise that Professor James, that we will end soon because he has to leave. But before you leave, Prof, we would like to take pictures first. Yeah. Can everybody open their camera so we nak ambil gambar? Okay. Professor James, are you still there? Please don't go away.
Cannot see me?
Okay. Kita ambil gambar dulu, baru Prof boleh pergi. Kita tak benarkan Prof pergi sebelum ambil gambar. Terima kasih, Prof. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Ambil gambar? Yes. One more time, Prof James. Please don't go away first.
I think you better ask people to turn on the camera. A lot of people.
Please. Orang tak nak buka gambar ni, malu. Muka dia semua cantik-cantik dan handsome. Tak bagi kita tunjuk gambar dia. Okay. Never mind. Right.
Okay, Puan Moderator, we have another VIP in the room, Senator from Sarawak, Robert Lau.
Oh,
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. I just raised up my hand. Sorry for being late to join. I wasn't aware of this. Thank you to the Ministry of Kementerian Hal Ehwal Sabah dan Sarawak for organizing this session. My question and also comment is to both, is that with this Kementerian Hal Ehwal Sabah and Sarawak, how much authority and power do you really have to really implement the equal partnership of the three regions? And I think what Datin raised and what James also added to it is that the partnership, although we now have it in legal terms with the recent amendment to the Constitution, but the real impact on the ground is the financial part of it. From Sarawak and Sabah, our main grouses are actually the sharing of the cake is not equally distributed. The law may say that we are equal, but when the effect of it is not felt equally. What do you have to say for this, especially from the Kementerian Hal Ehwal Sabah dan Sarawak?
So I would suggest Puan Norrizan answer that because obviously Datin and myself are not part of the ministry. So, but thank you very much for coming, and I enjoy the session. So I have to leave now. So thank you very much.
thank you, Prof,
Thank you,
for
Prof.
coming all the way from Hobart. I hope to see you in person. Okay. Thank you, sir, for the question. Unfortunately, I cannot answer your question right now. We will be in touch again, and we will be very happy to communicate with you again. Yeah. For Datin, I would like to say thank you for contributing today. I'm sure people learn a lot from each other. 16 September itu adalah tarikh keramat bagi kita. Kibarkan jalur gemilang. Ada perbezaan antara kita, tapi cuba meraihkan perbezaan itu sebagai satu keistimewaan, ya. Dan I'm sure as our nation progress, our nation will be better. Kita semua berharap negara kita akan terus aman dan damai dan terus maju, dan satu hari kita akan mencapai developed nation status seperti yang kita idam-idamkan selama ini. Developed status itu berbeza, ya, antara satu sama lain, dan kita akan mencapai developed status itu dengan cara Malaysia kita, ya, dan kita akan berusaha ke arah itu, ya. So kibarkan jalur gemilang dan sama-sama kita meraihkan perbezaan kita yang begitu unik sekali. Dan akhir kata, seperti biasa, saya ingin menyampaikan pantau yang selalu saya katakan selepas perbincangan kita. Kalau ada sumur di ladang, boleh saya numpang mandi. Kalau ada umur yang panjang, boleh kita berjumpa lagi. Kalau ada silap sepatah bagi pihak saya memohon maaf. Webinar ini ialah khas untuk menjadikan satu ruang untuk mengutarakan isu-isu semasa, terutama sekali untuk Sabah Sarawak. Dan kepada Profesor YB kita yang menanya soalan tu, nanti kita boleh berbincang dengan panjang lebar mengenai hal itu. Dan saya harap kalau ada isu-isu yang ingin diutarakan pada kita, dan sesiapa yang ada isu-isu yang begitu penting bagi kita bincangkan bersama, kita berharap dapat share dengan kita. Email pada saya norrizan@jpm.gov.my, ya. Terima kasih semua. Terima kasih Datin, Profesor. Thank you everybody.
Terima kasih semua. Salam sejahtera.
Ya.
Selamat Hari Malaysia.
Selamat Hari Malaysia semua.
Thank you. Selamat Hari Malaysia.
Thank you.